Hello, and welcome to Stories from the View, a podcast from the Pleasant View Senior Center in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. On this podcast, we invite East Longmeadow residents to tell us stories about their lives and events. Today's guest is Bruce Moore. Bruce is Vice Chair of the Historical Commission and a resident since 1955. And here's today's host, Eric Elmendorf.
Well, Bruce, it's great to see you again. I'll have to say that before we started recording, Bruce said to me, he said, "Oh yeah, I know you. You live on such and such a street," and so it was like, wow, okay. Bruce had come to a tag sale that we had a long, long time ago, so it was like, so anyway, so it's great to see you, and great to have you on this program. Been looking forward to this for a long time. I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I did actually bring in a book from the East Longmeadow Centennial that I bought at a tag sale a few years ago, and so anyway, but so there's a lot to talk about, I think, about the history of the town, and so Bruce. Let me ask you first. I mean, I'll probably have some questions for you along the way, and Ed will as well. But what do you got for us?
Oh, I was going to recount some of the memories I had growing up in town here.
Great.
If you don't mind. Thank you for inviting me here.
You're welcome.
In 1955, my dad got a job at Standard Electric Time in Springfield near Springfield College. So we moved from Wausau, Wisconsin, where I was born, to East Longmeadow. My parents had 4 boys and 1 daughter. And one of my earliest memories is once a week, my mother got the car to go shopping. Once we only had 1 car, as did most people in town. So everybody had to get in that car before my dad went to work. And we'd drive him to he'd drive to Standard Electric. My mother'd get the car. We'd go back home and eat breakfast, go to school. She'd shop, and afterward, we'd have to go back to Standard Electric as a family and pick him back up. Which today everybody has 2 or 3 cars in a family. So.
Well, it sounds like it was nice. I mean, for the family togetherness.
Yeah. Nobody had seatbelts either.
Yeah, of course not.
I started kindergarten at 4 years old, and we lived up in a neighborhood where Inward Commons is now. So I'd walk to kindergarten down at the Methodist Church, which was at that time at the corner of Elm Street and Center Square, where there's a little plaque there that. Well, there was a plaque that commemorated where the church was, but
and what's there now?
It's just a round. I think it says Center Square or something. It said operating engineers on it, but they moved out, and it has a welcome to Center Square or something. Yeah. But the church was there, so I walked down Summers Road at 4 years old, and at front of the Congo Church there was a crossing guard. She'd cross us over to Pleasant Street where the bank is, and then we'd cross over to the church and had kindergarten in the basement, and afterwards we'd walk back home and thought nothing of it. And I went to 1st and 2nd grade at Center School, where the Red Schoolhouse is now, and the Quarry Man statue. There was a big old school there that was torn down around 1972. At that school, I could walk to school in the morning. My brother and I, he's 10 months older than I am, but we were in the same grade. And at noon, we'd walk back home for lunch. And then you could walk back, take your time, because there was a recess going on then, and you just joined in the recess when you came back. So there was no time restrictions. And it was like the honor system. You weren't going to go anywhere. So that was a fun.
It sounds like it. Different world back then, huh?
Yep. Let's see. In 2nd grade, my brother Scott and I had to endure a neighborhood bully. he was a few years older than us and would torment us on the way home from school for a couple weeks at least. And then there was an older boy than him in the neighborhood that I might have mentioned it to him or what was going on. But as we were getting bullied one day, this older neighborhood kid showed up and took the kid in the backyard, and he never bothered us again. So I don't know what transpired, but I was thankful for Steve showing up and
that worked.
taking care of that. I think the bully his dad might have died or they were divorced, but he had a chip on his shoulder and just took it out on, we couldn't react to an older bully, we just had to put up with it. Oh, in third grade, I went to Maple Shade School, and our bus stop was on High Street near the Parish Hall, St. Michael's Parish Hall, which is adjoining to where the Red Schoolhouse is, which was center school. So walking to school one morning, Mr. Wilson, the mailman, smoked cigarettes, and he dropped one in the street that was still going. So I picked it up and kept it going, and went over to center school. And thinking I was Mr. Big Shot, I was puffing it, and the kids were out before school, and I was this third grader, smoking a cigarette, and I didn't think much of that. And I came home from school, and some parents had called my parents, and some teachers had called it what your son had been doing at school, setting a bad example. So I don't think I got a spanking for that, but I never did it again. But just some weird stuff you do as a kid. I went to Maple Shade School, 3rd to 5th grade, and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Birchland Park. The majority of the students took a bus, rode a bike, or walked to school. No parents that I know of drove their kids to school like
no
you see
car
today, because they only had the one car. The dad took it for work, and you had to if you want to get somewhere, you walked or rode your bicycle, as most of us all did. So, and during the summer, they had a wading pool here at Pleasant View School, which was too far for me to go, in a rec program here. And they also had one at the center. They had a wading pool down there. You can still see the outline of it near the old fire station, the brick fire station on Shaker Road, which was built in 1924. And then they built a new one where Walgreens is in 1952. So that building was empty, and the rec department took it over, and they had programs for kids all summer. You just told your parents, all the kids told their parent, we're going to the center, and we all went unattended because they knew right where you were, and you didn't get in trouble. It was a good way to spend pretty much most of your whole day there, swimming in the pool, and they had shuffleboard and tons of the swing sets over there. Jeff probably went there as a kid too. And it was just a fun place to go. And they had a pond over on Shaker Road. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Can I interrupt you for a second,
certainly.
Bruce?
Yeah.
You said there was a wading pool here?
Yeah, out back. It's filled in right now.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The janitor was looking for it here because he would assume there was some silver coins around there the kids had dropped, but it's pretty well underground because you had to go. I'm looking for anybody that went here as a child that might have a picture of that. I'd love to put that up on our website for the town. We have one of the center pool at the center with kids in it, but it's just like the holy grail of pictures for me. And they filled the pool every day. They open up a drain on the street and filled it up, or a water main. And then I think they always added chlorine, but one day Mr. Bradstreet was going around dumping chlorine in the water, and we've all volunteered we'll stir it, in the water. And I don't have any leg hair now, but I don't know if that's where it came from. No one knew anything about the dangers of anything. We couldn't volunteer fast enough.
Right.
We'll get get that done.
Well, it's interesting that you say you're looking for some pictures of what it was like back then, because one of the questions I have in terms of the Historical Commission is this is an opportunity to let people know what you're looking for if you have specific items that you might be.
The one, my brother, he runs the, you're from East Long Meadow site. He's in Northern California, but he runs that website. And he would love to, when the post office was on Shaker Road near the ski house, we were looking to, I'd never found a picture of that. You see on either side of it, but not one that says post office on the building.
Okay. Well, I didn't know about that site. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the moderator. I'm sure he'll let you join it.
Good.
So, growing up in town, most homes with younger children had a sandbox. So we would typically go to the beginning of Converse Street where the sand dunes were, and you could pull over on either side of the street then and just take your pails and whatever you had and fill it up with beach sand all along the road. And one of the days we went to do that, my dad had an old 50s car, and the lock, the door handle, I guess if you went up, it locked it, and down, it opened it. And we were going around the corner on Dwight Road. My dad's driving, I'm in the middle, and my brother Scott's on the passenger side. And he told my brother to lock the door, and he went up with the handle, which opened it. And, he didn't know, I didn't know how to do that stuff either. And he went flying out the car, and my dad reached across me and grabbed him just as he was scraping along the road. He wasn't going fast at that time around the corner, but he got him back in the car with some scrapes on his knees. But, that could have been a harrowing experience for. And those dunes are really unique. Don would remember them growing up. They were 20 or 30 feet tall all along Dwight Road. On the left, there was one real steep one that had cliff swallows living in it. Like you'd see like 40 holes in the side of the bank, and they were permanent homes, I think, or maybe they migrated, but you always saw cliff swallows going in and out of there. And I think those dunes were from what they call Lake Hitchcock that used to be further up north, and Long Meadow might have been the beach area where the sand got accumulated because it was 20 or 30 feet tall. And that area was called the Wilderness on Converse Street. When you'd never thought that would be habitated by anybody because it was just a wasteland. And when we had town meetings years ago in the 1890s, before we split, we had one meeting a year in East Long Meadow and then the next year in Long Meadow. So the people had to traverse down Converse Street, and they absolutely hated it because it was a one-lane road with no lighting on it. And each town wanted the other to put lighting in there, which they never did. And it just made it part of the fracturing of the two towns. It led, one of many things that led to the splitting of Long Meadow and East Long Meadow. And even today, the Thanksgiving football game is between Long Meadow and East Long Meadow at either school. And it's an amazing rivalry today that still started back in the 1890s. People don't know why don't we like Long Meadow? Why don't they like us? And it's carried on since that day.
So what is there where the dunes were, where the sand dunes were now?
I think they took all that out for 91 when they used it for fill.
Okay.
But right when you turn the corner on Dwight Road to Converse, there's an office building, and then Glen Meadow, I think it is there, that huge building, and they built houses on the side, and they have to bring in dirt for the yards because it's 100% sand. They get rid of this and dig down, and it's always been an issue with lawns in that end of town. It was just a wilderness is what they called it. It was a unique part of our history. Most of the homes in town had one telephone, and it was a party line, and we weren't allowed to use it. But one Sunday I picked it up, and there was two ladies talking on there, and I just asked them, how you doing, and would you like to come over for lunch or something? And they said yes, and I just hung up. And I never knew who they were. They didn't know who I was. But you had to, if someone was on the line, you had to wait for the line to, and other people could probably listen to you talk too. It was,
I remember as a kid. Yes, I remember the party lines. Yes.
Yeah.
Got to tell my grandsons about that.
Yeah. That was fun. And I didn't make my first phone call till fourth grade. Nobody had cell phones or stuff like that. But I was at Maple Shade School, and Doug Goodrich was in the class. And for recess, they had these big balls, almost the size of a basketball with air. And there's only a few of them on a shelf. So during recess, you'd want to go get one of those balls to play games out in the field. And so that was my excuse to make a phone call to ask Doug to get a ball the next day at school, and I had to get permission to make the call. I might not have made another call till I graduated high school. I don't know. In the summer, most of the kids played outside. We were just told to be home at dark.
Yeah.
Nobody played inside.
Sure.
When the street lights come on.
Yeah. And I would always question, what does dark mean? What you can see, your arm, or you had one with the street lights,
Yeah.
And I played growing up in the fields where Inward Commons is, in Quarry Hill. That they were all taken by eminent domain from the homeowners that owned them, mostly on Summers Road. The land went back there, and I would chase butterflies as a kid, or bring praying mantises home, or pick blueberries or wildflowers for my mother. And then in 1970, the bulldozer came in, and, we didn't know what was going on. And I was already out of high school then, so it didn't bother me as much, other than seeing your play area gone forever. And you don't see all those insects and birds and stuff anymore. All their habitat's been taken, unfortunately.
So brought in to develop homes there.
Yeah, and Inward Commons and Quarry Hill. Yeah, for the elderly.
Okay.
It's a good thing to have there. So.
Yeah. I'm relatively new to the area, so that's some of what you're saying. I'm not quite sure about.
Yep. One event that happened every summer was a fishing derby on Shaker Road. The pond is still there now, but years ago it had a divider in the middle, like 60-40. The bigger pond was for playing hockey for the older kids. But in the winter, it was essentially, on the weekends, I guess, it was just for skating. And you could put hundreds of kids on that pond, because it was real shallow. It always pretty much iced up to the bottom. And parents didn't have to worry about your kids sinking in a quarry hole or something like that. So. And Blackman Pond wasn't developed yet. The Corps Army engineers hadn't dredged that out yet. So the center ponds were the place to go for skating. And it was a real popular place. And did you ever skate there, Jeff? Yeah. And they had ski and skate sales at all the churches, so you could get skates for $1. The kids never had any shortage of skates. But during the fishing derby, hundreds of kids would show up, and at 8 o'clock, they'd give a whistle, and all like 400 lines at once would go out, and whoever caught the first fish got a prize, a tackle box or something. The Lions Club still runs it today.
I was going to say, it still goes on.
But, and then after the derby was over, I spent hundreds of hours walking around the pond. As the water got hotter, the fish started. They were slowly dying because the water was too hot. They'd just circle around and around trying to get oxygen, and we'd chase them around trying to catch them. And then one day it'd be too hot and they'd all be dead, which I think probably happens at Heritage too. I haven't fished there in a long time, but that was just a lot of fun. I spent almost a year of my life probably at the center. It was just a go-to place I swam in the pool till I was 11 and fished there. And just a good place to have in town for recreation. You know, they don't have as much there now. Excuse me, the swings are gone and the pool's filled in. But,
So now are there pictures
yeah.
that are around at the historical museum?
Oh, they're on my brother's website.
Oh, on the website. Okay.
Yeah, he's got pictures of all that stuff. One year, excuse me, my two brothers and I got to participate in the 4th of July parade with Mr. Nooney in town. His father, Sanford Nooney, owned Nooney's Hardware, where Golden Years is now. That was a perennial hardware store for well over 100 years. But Mr. Nooney would ride a high-wheel bike in the parade. And I guess he was an engineer of sorts. He made 5 small versions of the high-wheel bikes, and my brothers and I and his 2 sons rode in the parade. We put on derby hats and ruffled shirts and had to ride the parade route, which started at Birchland in the days and came around. But there was a lot of horses in the parade back then, and by the time we got our position, you had to go around all these piles of horse poop on the road. And you didn't want to run over that in your bicycle and your good shirt on, you know, but you really had to be careful. There was they didn't have people going behind the horses cleaning up, but that was just fun. And another good 4th of July memory was I'd walk down Prospect Street opposite where the fire station is, and the town used to block Shaker Road off, and they'd have a square dance there. And as a kid, I didn't know what that was. And you'd watch the caller and the girls with their dresses spinning around. And I'd watch it a couple of years in a row, you know, and just was fascinated. I didn't know what a square dance was. And then they'd have carnival and the fireworks there at the center. One year they had a high diver there. I don't know if you Jeff, went to those center 4th of July stuff.
I remember the fireworks displays down there. And
yeah, but they had a high dive guy there. I'm at least 60 feet up. He had a ladder and a pool no more than 3 feet at the most.
I was going to say, what did he dive into?
He dove into that, a dive, and somehow he came up so quick he didn't get hurt. He only did it once. But I don't know if he got paid, but I was like, he stood up there for seeming like a long time for the perfect, you know, maybe he was praying, and then, you know, he could have died or ruptured some organs, but it was just, they brought people like that in years ago to do stuff to attract people in the town. It sure worked for me.
Yeah.
Growing up, I was not allowed to go near any of the quarries in town. And they had a working quarry on Summers Road the opening was where Brownstone Gardens is now. That's where you access the quarry. And where the third section of Brownstone Gardens is, that's built right over the edge of the quarry there on Summers Road. But that's where they would do a lot of blasting when I was a kid, that we weren't allowed to go there. But as they chased the layer of brownstone, it got deeper into the earth. So they had to remove this overburden on top. And they did that by dynamiting this junk rock off the top. And they're supposed to put mats down on top of where the blast site was, which took a lot of time. And there were more than one time they didn't do that. And they'd blast, and the rock would come right up over Summers Road and land on the road. And they'd have to call a cop from down at the center where the station was, where Walgreens is. And they'd have to clear the road of the debris. And Sandy Davis lives at 117 Summers Road. And on the other side of the street, a rock went over the street and through a roof in a car in her yard.
Oh my God.
And another one landed next to a playpen that was in a yard. No kid was in it, but I don't know, nowadays they'd find the daylights out of you. Not doing that, but it was just like call the cops. We got another debris field in the road to clean up.
So about what year did this?
This was in the early 60s.
This was in the early 60s. Yep. So they're still, so the quarries hadn't filled in with water. Yeah.
I'll talk about
Okay.
Mr. Chaporis later because he's the one that ran that particular quarry.
Okay.
Oh, later on, I swam and fished in a lot of those quarries in town. In 2009, Don Mackey from LCAT made a video. It's called A Visit to Pine Quarry. We went out there and just did a walking virtual tour. And you can find that on the internet now. And Don and Al Grimaldi made several other videos with me about town history.
Yeah.
Jawbuck Reservoir is another one we did, which was off of Denslow Road. And the land was owned by Queen Wilhelmina at the time, who was the Queen of the Netherlands, and she was the richest woman in the world at the time. She owns hundreds of acres on Denslow Road and Shaker Road, and they grew tobacco there and shipped it overseas.
Oh my gosh.
It must have been real profitable.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Where the solar fields are on Denslow Road, on the left where the toy box is, there was tobacco barns down there. And on the right, there was tobacco barns all over the place there.
Right.
And
wow.
it was just, the Shakers owned a lot of land too. There was tons of farmland on Shaker Road.
Yeah.
Luckily, they made the, Joe Dilk had the vision to make the industrial park there. So that's where that most of that land.
But in the reservoir was the dams that made the reservoir were for irrigation for the tobacco fields.
Yeah.
Oh.
They were earthen dams to begin with, and after the 55 hurricane, they got washed out, so they made cement dams. You can still see the spillway on Denslow Road on the right.
Yes.
Between John Mayberry's and the water
I always
pumping
wondered
station,
what.
I think
I always wondered what that was.
Yeah,
Oh.
and they all interconnect. Mr. Dietrich had made a series of ponds on the road to the post office that were all self-leveling, and they ended up crossing Denslow Road under the street and go down towards Shaker Farms there. That's where the reservoir, the Whetstone tobacco, or probably Queen Wilhelmina before Whetstone, used that to irrigate the crops in the summer from the reservoir there, which was man-made. They dammed up, and it's still there. In the video, we could access it at the time before they built the solar field, but now you can still get back there behind the bus station. They don't mind, but there's so many deer ticks out there now, it's hardly worth going out there to get Lyme disease looking. You just have to be cognizant if you go out there.
Yeah.
You'll have to check out those videos. I was not aware of that.
Yep.
Yeah, on LCAT.
Yeah.
We have
pretty
a
cool.
historical museum at 87 Maple Street run by the Historical Commission. It's open the third Saturday of each month from 1 to 3 p.m. or by appointment for tours, and you can also get a tour of Pine Quarry. Is it all right to leave my number on the?
Yeah.
My number is 525-3072 if you wanted to get a tour of Pine Quarry or the museum. And I'll just end with I wanted to talk a little about Stratty Chaporis, who owned McCormick Longmeadow Stone Company. He married Eileen McCormick, whose father started the company in the early 1900s in Holyoke, and then they moved to East Longmeadow. And he owned the quarry where Brownstone Gardens is, and later bought the property off of Elm Street where Redstone Quarry is, up Redstone Drive. That was an old quarry. He reopened. He petitioned the town to make a new quarry district in town, and it was very tenuous at the meetings. People didn't know why are you doing this? And he had huge orders from New York University for buildings there. So they drained the old quarry to see which direction the stone was going, and then they'd done borings, and I don't know if there was 35 billion feet of stone under the ground that never been tapped. So they were able to get the quarry district and remove the overburden and start pulling rock out of the ground for the Bob's Library in New York was one of the last buildings done. It's all redstone and all crandled, and different universities at Yale and around town. And they did at Mount Holyoke College. That's all East Longmeadow brownstone. And in town here, Chaporis, the stone from Redstone, they made St. Michael's Church in 1970. W.J. Quinn did the construction, but that all came from the quarry up behind Graziano Gardens. And they did the Berkshire Bank on Shaker Road, all that nice, beautiful stone from there. And,
yeah.
And the one next to the Pride Station, it used to be Ramito's, or it was a bank first and then Ramito's, but it's vacant now. I'm hoping they don't tear it down, but that's the way we do stuff in town. They let buildings get so decrepit, they tear them down. You know, Longmeadow saves buildings. We don't have a huge
Right.
inventory of older buildings that have been saved. It's
Right.
just a sad commentary. But Mr. Chaporis also donated to the town. In front of the town hall, there's two big obelisks of stones. They're the 75th anniversary stone of the town when we separated from Longmeadow, and the 100th anniversary stone. The 69 one is all red stone from up there on Elm Street, and the 100th-year anniversary is from the lighter brownstone at, it was McCormick's Quarry, but when the Norcross had it, they called it Worcester Quarry, and before that it was a Taylor Quarry. Whoever owns the quarry, they just name it that way. And then the town hall itself is built from the Kibbe Quarry. It's another distinct shade depending on how much iron is in the stone. So if you stand in front, you can see the distinct layers or colors we have in town of the same exact stone, but it just has different iron content. And it just was a tribute. He did all that carving himself and donated it to the town.
Wow.
And saved some of when they tore the old library down, he had the whole facade on the front was all brownstone, and his son saved some of that stone, and all they did was incorporate it in the sidewalk, which is getting eaten up by salt right now, but they didn't want to use it in the building. But it's just, the quarry closed down in around 1970.
Okay.
That they reopened on the Redstone Quarry. They were pumping the groundwater across the brook on Elm and Cooley, and it was reddish from all the redstone. They didn't have a settling pond at the time, and the water was red in the brook, and the people had an environmental concern that it was killing things or whatever the reason. But he had to shut down, and they went bankrupt, and the land's now being built. I think there was 20 houses up there now, and it's too bad the town didn't get that property for community preservation.
And you talk about that used to be the swimming when they ran the swimming place.
Yep. Yeah, Lindner's owned that in the 40s when it was empty, and they had their own swimming school there. And
Now, are you talking like an area like around Indian Spring or something
No,
like?
this is off of Elm Street behind Graziano Gardens up the hill.
Oh, it's up that way.
Yeah. There's
Like Dawes and stuff like
yeah, you go up Redstone, and, but now you've got two quarries up there with a fence around them and 20 houses, and it would have been nice to have some kind of a park there, because I swam in there.
I've
Hundreds
often
of
wondered
kids
why there's
swam
no
there.
access there. Yeah.
Well, the Lindners owned it privately.
Yeah.
They bought it back after Chaporis went bankrupt from
So
Milt.
that's still private property.
Well, now it's a housing development.
Yeah, it's a housing development now, but it was private for years, and it's just, they took there was hundreds of tons of stone still up there that they never used, and it would have been a nice just to see it stay that way, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah, I've often wondered about that, the quarries, whether they're privately owned or the town owns them.
Well, the Pine Quarry, you can access from the parking lot of Wingate off of Chestnut. That town owns that as conservation land.
Oh, okay.
And like next to the police station is Brownstone Gardens. You can walk around that.
Right.
But there's no fishing signs, and just protecting themselves. And across the street's an abandoned quarry too, where the Bureks live on either side, but that's private there. And the one
And they're all filled with water?
There's a couple dry ones at Pine Quarry. Not all of them hit
Really?
groundwater, which most of them, they shut up. The one across from the police station, they hit groundwater and they didn't have pumps in the day, so they abandoned it. And then when they got electric pumps, they pumped it dry and they kept it. Even the McCormick's Quarry, they had to pump it 24 hours a day to keep the water out to be able to access the stone. And when they abandoned it in 70, it filled up, and we were swimming in that same summer. You know, it was crystal clear water. Jaws hadn't come out yet. So you weren't afraid to go down, keep going down as far as you could, But it was just fun growing up in town here.
Question about the old library. Where was the old library that was?
Right where it is now.
Oh, right.
The footprint was pretty much there.
Oh, okay. So they tore down the old one and built
And the fire station, and in 2004, they made the new.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's when that was there.
Feels right. Yeah.
Yep.
When they tore
And during
that down in the Third National
during
Bank.
COVID, I had a lot of extra time, so I wrote a book about basements. And it made the bestseller list.
You could have done a chapter on mine.
I was wondering when we were gonna get the jokes.
Yeah. One other one. I recently joined a new group for compulsive talkers. It's called On and On Anon.
Good one.
I don't know if you guys have any questions more. But.
Well, I've been to the museum. I think it's great. I would highly recommend that on the third Saturday it is that people go to see it. One question I have is I've had an experience of working with museums in the past where I found out that there are things that don't get on display, like they're in the back room. Like, do you have other
I think I've heard a typical museum has 90% or more in the basement, which is sad. Yeah. And we have 100% of our stuff up. Well, it's only a small building, but we've called out, people donated stuff from Hamden, Springfield, Longmeadow. So when we got moved, we were next to the fire station. We got moved out of there for the new development, and the Norcross was kind enough to let us go on one of their parking lots up there.
Mm-hmm.
So
The
house was moved, right? Yeah.
So we're contiguous with the Norcross now, and they're up and running as a functioning, renting the carriage house out and stuff.
Right.
Now, what about the library? There's a room in the library.
We have a history room in the library.
Okay. And what is there? I mean, you need approval to go in there,
you'd need a commission member to go in with you, but you can go in, and all the archival photos and history of the houses in town particularly are in there, and you could go in and access your house if you lived in an old house in town, or relatives or any. They're all in categories: police, fire department, town history, town government, like that, in boxes. And we just got them out of cardboard banker's boxes into plastic bins with lids, and now we just found out we need to get them into archival, the cardboard boxes. So we need volunteer help. Hundreds of hours to get this done. But we have a good working crew now at the Historical Commission. And
so you're looking for volunteers to help?
Oh, sure. There's always volunteers needed.
Good.
And
So
I think they wanted to start digitizing stuff. The town reports from 1890s are online, all to current. They've done that.
Good.
So it's a work in progress. And at our museum at 87 Maple, we have a big shed, and we're trying, now that we have a good working crew, we're going to make that an open part of the display too. There's a lot of agrarian stuff in there, old sickles and tools when we were a farm town, and plus some old quarry stuff that's going to be in there. We never were able to open it before. So we got old church pews and Cooley's double ripper in there that is famous in his book. A big long, like it's 18 feet, I think, long. They used to call it a double ripper. They drag it up the hill in the winter and slide all the way down through the center, because,
At the bottom.
yeah, it's a. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a-
okay. I was going to
I'm
ask.
sorry.
I wasn't quite sure what that
Oh, yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard, that's what they called it, and it's in his book, Things I Remember About East Long Meadow. You can
Okay.
find that
It's an
here and there.
18-foot toboggan?
I
Is that
think
what you
so,
said?
and it's heavy. A blacksmith made the runners, and I don't know how the kids towed it back up the hill. You know, going down is one thing, but
Yeah.
a few runs of that here, and yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in Cooley's book, he says that the trolley conductor would come into town if it was a snowy day, and he'd take a run on the toboggan, on the rubber. You know, he had he'd keep the trolley off the track so the kids could run it. You know, I'm sure there wasn't a lot of traffic on the trolley during a blizzard, but then they didn't plow the streets back then either. Years ago, they didn't have snow, or certainly not salt either like they do now. So the town's changed a lot, and I'm glad to grow up here and still be try to help with community service to the town. It's a good town to live in and give back to. So
Glad you do what you do.
well,
Pulling all
thank
this
you
together.
guys for all you guys do too.
So if a person wanted to volunteer, how would they get started? Who would they contact?
I believe there's a website. I'm not too savvy on the internet, but there is for the East Long Meadow Historical Commission, and probably a working phone number there. You could call somebody, and we have meetings once a month in the library now. We were meeting at the Red Schoolhouse. But you can be an associate member or just come to meetings and help out in any way, whatever you like to do.
Those meetings are what night?
Second Monday of the month, 6 o'clock with starting time, up in the library.
At the library?
Yep. And they usually just run an hour. We have to be out of there by 8.
And so the public can,
Oh, certainly. Yep.
come to those
Yep.
meetings? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to put it on my calendar.
All right.
Yeah, there you go, Ed. Okay.
They're talking about creating a possible historic district in areas of the town where the Baptist Church Village used to be on Meadowbrook Road. That
Yeah.
was Summers Road. It's Meadowbrook Road now, but that was always Summers Road. They straightened it out in the 54, I think, and changed it to Meadowbrook Road. They couldn't come up with a name that everyone agreed on, so they just picked Meadowbrook. I think that's how it went down. If you got too many people arguing, you just have a moderator come in and make the decision for you. So,
And what other areas are they thinking for historic districts?
well, certainly the beginning of Elm Street, that's going up. Most of the spokes from town, the old,
Yeah.
the settlements were in the center,
Yeah.
near the center, and
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just being
interesting.
fleshed out now. George Kingston is helping a lot with that, and then
Of
there's a
course.
lot of research to be done on that and red tape to go through, and it may take a while. We have to get the blessing of the town council too. And I believe our plans are certainly to make it less restrictive, way less restrictive than Long Meadow, where on Route 5, you can't put vinyl siding on or change your windows, or you have to keep it looking exactly like it is. This would be just more a designation that it's a historic area in town.
Interesting.
And there's I think there's 100 or more easily houses that go back before 1894 in town.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so Bruce, I'm really glad that you came in. Yeah, and I'm really hoping, do you think that you would like to come back at some point and talk to us, maybe more about changes like that have happened in town and those types of things? Is that
It's something to consider.
okay? All right, good. Well,
I'm going to find you a
you'll
couple
think
more
about it.
people too to interview.
That would be
in
great.
town.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
would be great. Yes.
That would be wonderful. Well, thank you so much for
Oh,
coming
you're
in
more
today.
than
Yeah,
welcome
we
and
very
happy
much
to do
appreciate
that.
it. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
It was
Have a
great
blessed day.
information. You
Thank
too.
Right.
That wraps up another episode of Stories from the View. We'd like to thank our guest, Bruce Moore. The Stories from the View podcast is available on LCAT 01028 channel on YouTube. If you have a story you'd like to share on the program, contact Pleasant View Senior Center Director Erin Kobler by stopping by the center or by calling Erin at 413-525-5436, extension 1401, or send her an email at erin.kobler@eastlongmeadowma.gov. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time at Stories from the View.